A to Z with Mark Zinno, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it starts now.
Good afternoon. Welcome to A to Z here on Locked On Sports Atlanta, where today I tell you, you gotta love guys who have guts. Welcome in. We are live here on this Thursday and a lot to do. Make sure you guys give us a follow on Twitter at Locked On ATL. Of course, I'm at Mark Zinno, MarkZinno. The Freddie Freeman agent saga continues to take twists and turns. This is an official soap opera now. We'll get into that coming up here in just a little bit. The big news of the day, though, when it came last night, was that the Atlanta Hawks have acquired Dejounte Murray from the San Antonio Spurs, sending Gallinari and 3 first-round draft picks. I can't even say it. It's so many picks. 3 first-round draft picks to the San Antonio Spurs, and this is exactly the kind of player that the Hawks needed. Now, let's look at this objectively from a big picture standpoint. The Spurs, it takes a lot of guts to do what they did from the standpoint of you're trading away a 25-year-old, really good shooter, all-star, good defender on an extremely manageable contract, and the kind of player that you want to kind of rebuild around, or at least one of the pieces you want to rebuild around. You're trading that individual away for basically nothing but draft picks. And that's always a little bit of a crapshoot. And it's tough because when you're in the middle of a rebuild, you know, the pieces you can acquire, because you're not going to get a ton in free agency, the players that you can develop and acquire that you've already had, you want to keep. So there is a gamble for San Antonio here. Let's not forget that. The bigger gamble, obviously, is for the Atlanta Hawks. And when I saw the trade yesterday on Twitter, I just tweeted out a GIF of somebody pushing all their chips to the center of the table. And I had a couple of people come back to me going, oh, this isn't going all in. So I'm sorry. Is giving away 3 first-round draft picks not going all in? Because it feels like it. That generally is the definition of being all in. There aren't players who generally are worth 3 first-round draft picks. Right? Like that is a massive haul. Yesterday on the show, we talked about the idea of 4 first-round draft picks, and I was uncomfortable at 4. I'm not as uncomfortable at 3, but this is clearly a move. One, it empties the cupboard. Like the Hawks don't have any draft pick compensation left that they can offer anybody, right? I mean, I suppose they could give away their 2023 first-round draft pick, because the 3 draft picks they gave away, the one in 2023 is Charlotte's. That one is protected. And the other 2 in 25 and 27 are not protected. Excuse me, sorry. So the Hawks only have their own 2023 first-round draft pick left, and they don't have much they can give away other than that. So there's not really any draft pick compensation left. That feels like it's an all-in move. Secondly, you're pairing together 2 guys who need the ball in their hand to be really effective with this trade. Trey and Dejounte Murray both need the ball. Both of those guys have the ball in their hand a ton. And Murray is nowhere near as good a 3-point shooter as Trey is, but he still can create his own shot. He's a good perimeter defender, which is exactly what the Hawks need. And, you know, this is a guy who maybe can get Trey off ball a little more and see how Trey can play that way. It's going to be difficult at first, and no one really knows because we've never seen them on the court together. But the assumption is that it may be a little bit of a challenge at first to get these 2 guys to play together and figure out who they are and how they're going to work and what it's going to look like and all those things. So, you know, I mean, it's very much a situation where, you know, the Hawks are maybe putting a square peg in a round hole. We just don't know yet. There is one other issue for the Hawks that they need to still address that the Dejounte Murray trade doesn't address, and I'll tell you what that is in a moment. But first, a word from our friends over at LinkedIn. You know, I use LinkedIn more than any other social media site, and I found it to be very, very fruitful when it comes to making business connections. But if you're a business and you're looking to hire, you can create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. You just add your job and then the purple hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile and spread the word about the fact that you're hiring so your network can help find the right people to hire. Simple tools, screening questions, and make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonmlb. That's linkedin.com/lockedonmlb to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, back to the Hawks here because the Dejounte Murray trade is great and it is a great step. But the other piece of this that is still void is that the Hawks really don't have a wing player that they can really truly trust, especially with DeAndre Hunter's knee injuries and things flaring up. And where is John Collins in all this? Is he still going to be traded? Can they find a dance partner to do that? Like that wing situation is great that you have a great backcourt now. That helps. That always helps. But you still haven't solved the 3-and-D wing scenario that you have been lusting after for quite some time. And that is something that I think still could be addressed and needs to be addressed. While, again, I've said this all offseason long. If John Collins staying here ends up being the case, is that the worst thing to happen? No, I don't think by any stretch of the imagination it is. I do think that as they get deeper into this offseason, you've seen all the moves that have happened as of late. James Harden, deciding to stay in Philly on a cheaper contract. There was that. What was the other big move? I guess, Bradley Beal opted out of his deal, but still could return to Washington. There's a lot of pieces already in shuffle here. And like I said, when the music stops, the Hawks may be left without a chair, in this case, a dance partner, because everybody else got what they already need, and they didn't have to give away assets or anything else. All they had to do was pay out money in free agency. So it's going to be difficult. The other part, too, about this is, and maybe this isn't a real problem, because as I've said repeatedly, you can never have too much shooting. But, what do you do with Herter and Bogey now that you have Trey, Dejounte, and you just drafted A.J. Griffin? Unless A.J. Griffin is the odd man out and doesn't get as many minutes as we think he's going to get. But where do Bogey and Herter fit in when you have Trey and Dejounte Murray on the floor for a better part of the game together? I get it when one of them goes to get a rest. Naturally, the other one comes in. But how often are you going to give rest? I mean, Trey's still playing 30-plus minutes a night. And what's the reason to not have Dejounte Murray playing 30-plus minutes a night, right? You want them both out there. And then finally, I'll say this about the trade that is a big picture view. But at the end of the day, there's no guarantee that Dejounte Murray is going to stay here after the next 2 years of his very, very cheap contract. You've got a 2-year window to convince him, so to speak, and show that this is a team that could be a championship caliber team. And if he doesn't, he could go somewhere else easily. And you've traded away 3 first-round draft picks for 2 years of a player. Granted, they could be 2 all-star years, but 2 years of a player, and then he's gone. And that's the risk, and that's the gamble. So I'll say it again. I love GMs who go all in. I love GMs who take big risks and big swings. And that's exactly what Travis Schlenk has done. And the entire front office of the Hawks, this is what they've all done. They'll be tied to this trade for the next several years. If it doesn't go well, these are the kind of things that get GMs fired. And I appreciate the ones who are willing to go all in and do this kind of stuff because you can't win without it. You just can't. So whatever is next for the Hawks on their agenda, and I would say if they stayed like this, Travis Schlenk held true to his word that this was a fix, not an overhaul. But as soon as you trade John Collins, this becomes an overhaul. This is a complete overhaul because your starting five is going to look nothing like it did last year, with the exception of Trae Young. Because it may be one other player, maybe it's Clint, who is the other player. So we'll see. But it was a big move and a big day for the Hawks, and we have to see how it plays out. All right, coming up next, Freddie Freeman continues to have this weird saga that is wrapped around him with this whole how his deal with the Dodgers went down, and now there may be lawsuits involved. But still, when push comes to shove, it's all going to go back to one man. That's Freddie Freeman. I'll explain next, right here on A to Z on Locked On Sports Atlanta, free on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Search Locked. Welcome back to A to Z here on Locked On Sports Atlanta, free on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Search Locked On Sports Atlanta. Check out all the shows on the Locked On Network, folks. We are over 2,000 subscribers to our YouTube channel. Make sure you give that thumbs up. We appreciate the love and the support. And certainly all the shows here on the Locked On Atlanta, Locked On Sports Atlanta Network are fantastic. And we're building something here. We got a lot of momentum. We appreciate you guys staying along with us. This segment A to Z brought to you by our friends at Arcade One Up. And we have to get to more of this Freddie Freeman saga because we spent some time on it yesterday. And then after the show, we get interesting news. And again, let me kind of just set the table here for a moment because, I still felt leading up through yesterday and yesterday's show that Freddie Freeman was being over emotional. He was being a little bit kind of like a somebody who had gone through a bad breakup and was in all the feels again, as the kids say, and having all these feelings after coming to Atlanta. And I think that's understandable. But when you get away from it a little bit more, if the Dodgers win the World Series, a lot of things will change. And I think Freddie Freeman will look back on it in 2 years, 3 years, whatever it may be, and say, I made the right decision at the right time. And there is one thing that popped up yesterday that sort of changed the game a little bit for me. And that was when Doug Gottlieb, who is a Fox Sports Radio host, national host, you guys know who Doug Gottlieb is, tweeted out that Casey Close never told Freddie Freeman about the Braves offer. This is why Freeman fired him. He found out in Atlanta this weekend. It isn't rare to have happen in MLB, but it happened. Close knew Freddie would have taken the ATL deal. Now, that is game-changing information because, as we said yesterday, when the breakup between Freddie and the Braves happened, it felt like it was at least mutual that Freddie ultimately had a decision to make. Freddie didn't make a decision because, remember, the agent doesn't work for the player doesn't work for the agent. The agent works for the player. And so understanding that Freddie had all the information available to him made a choice for one team over another, for one offer over another, for whatever the reasons are, it doesn't matter. But this piece of information from Doug Gottlieb, well, it leaves out a big deal because it's no longer, again, like a simple breakup. It's almost like somebody else interjected and lied, or somebody else got in the way, and that caused the breakup. And that's a little bit different. I think that changes things. Freddie didn't have all the information at the time. Freddie didn't have all the facts to be able to make a sound factual decision or logical decision based on everything that he knew. Then late last night, we get this whole statement from Excel Sports, which is the agency that Casey Close works for. And they say, quote, Doug Gottlieb tweeted a wholly inaccurate characterization of our negotiations with the Atlanta Braves. On behalf of Freddie Freeman, we are immediately evaluating all legal options to address the reckless publication of inaccurate information. And so now we're sitting here going, I have no idea what to believe anymore. I'm just confused. This is like a really bad saga when it all comes down to it, that it looks like when it's all said and done, everybody shares some measure of blame here, right? Like everybody shares some measure of blame. And I think it's important to understand why and how. And Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic did a great job at this in understanding it. And I agree wholeheartedly. But the Braves clearly didn't pursue him hard enough. If they wanted him that badly, they could have made it very, very easy. This is a company that in Liberty Media that is $1 billion company. Billions. They own billions and billions and billions of dollars. The idea that they are on a budget, on a payroll for a player like Freddie Freeman is kind of laughably ridiculous. I mean, it just is. Like there is no reason here that the Braves should have been on any sort of budget for a player of Freddie Freeman's stature. And I'm trying to just get the number here just so we're all in. Oh, yeah. Let's see. What was the number that they made last year? Give me a second here. I'll find it. I can't find it. Anyway, but Liberty Media. Oh, here it is. 568 million is what the Braves reported in total revenue for 2021. Like that line item on their budget, 568 million. And you're telling me that the Braves are going to haggle over an extra year and 20 million? Come on. Like you just didn't want it that badly. So the Braves certainly have their measure of blame in this. So does Excel. If there was any sort of, in Casey Close, if there was any sort of misleading, if there was anything other than the agent going, look, here's the offer we got from the Dodgers. This is the offer we got from the Braves. It's okay for the agent to go, I want to take this one. This one's worth more money. This one has more years. This one gives us more security, because, and I have an agent, so I understand this. There is an us component to this. We're in this together. I get it. I work for you. My agent works for me, but there is a certain amount of, I need to listen to you because you're the expert and you know the ins and outs of this and you understand this and why it's important. And so there is sort of this weird parasitic relationship. I need you, you need me kind of deal. And in the idea of Casey Close saying, I want you to take the bigger one, we get that. That's more money for you. It's more money for the agency. It's more money for everybody. And so I understand that. But ultimately, with stuff like this, the agent has to understand that it's personal, it means a lot, and you want the player to be happy because when your client is happy, you are happy, right? There's less headaches to deal with. It's a very transactional relationship. We get the deal done, boom, you get your money, I get mine, and everybody's happy. See you in 6 years. And so there is a whole bunch of blame on the agency for not laying all the facts out for Freddie Freeman. And then finally, I still believe this to be the case, that Freddie Freeman ultimately is the one to blame for this. Because if Freddie truly, really knew what he wanted in the moment, and Freddie truly, really understood where his emotions were in the moment, regardless of what the offers were, he would have told his agent, I want to be back in Atlanta. End of story. Get me the most money out of Atlanta you can, but I want to be back in Atlanta. He clearly didn't give those marching orders to Excel. If he did, Freddie Freeman is still a Brave, right? There's no way around that. Freddie never communicated clearly what he wanted the ultimate end of his free agency period to be. It's that simple. It's all he had to communicate. It was one sentence. Pick up the phone, call Casey Close. I don't care. I want to be in Atlanta. Get the absolute most money you can, but I want to be in Atlanta. And Close could have dragged out negotiations. He could have tried to squeeze more money out of him. I mean, he did, but he thought, as we all learned, that the hour deadline was going to make the Braves boom. And Alex Anthopoulos, in a sense, made the right move, but also you could argue that he was a little impatient, right? He had to believe, and everything would have led him to believe that there was another offer there when it clearly wasn't. So still, if Freddie wanted to be in Atlanta, he could be here in Atlanta. Because if Casey Close came back to him, look, the best we could do was 140, 5 years and 140. And Freddie would have said, okay, take the deal. We'll sign it. But that was never clearly communicated. And the bad part about all this is that all this is going to circle back to Freddie until he wants to speak publicly on why he fired his agent, how the deal went down, and everything else, because the agent is never going to come out and tell people how the deal went down. Yes, going after a media member like Doug Gottlieb because he lied and this, that, and the other, that's a whole different thing. But they are not going to get into their negotiation process publicly. Agents never do that, ever. How they handle things, it tips every other GM off in the business, whether it's football, baseball, basketball, doesn't matter. The agency doesn't want to let anybody know how they do their negotiations. That's bad business for them. So they'll never say it. The only person who's going to say how this whole went down, as they understood it, is Freddie Freeman. And if he wants another agency to represent him at some point, it's probably not wise for him to do that because nobody's going to want to touch him. Nobody's going to want to touch him, especially when they don't have to negotiate anything for him until he's 37 years old and close to being out of baseball. So Freddie is the only person who can clear this whole mess up. And I don't know that he can or that he will. It's going to be very, very difficult. All right, we got some big news here. Boom shakalaka, as they say. The one and only NBA Jam is back. Arcade One Up is the leader in home retro arcade games, and is not only bringing the best game ever back, but they've made it bigger than ever with a wait for it, a Shaq Edition machine. People are obsessed with NBA Jam, and we're thrilled to tell our listeners that you can once again play hoops with NBA legends in this arcade classic. You jump clear across the court, set the ball on fire, all of that. And one of the first sports games ever to feature real and digitized NBA licensed teams. No fouls, no free throws, and no quarters required. Compete with friends and family through all new Wi-Fi leaderboards, making you more connected than ever. Pre-order now from arcade1up.com. That's arcade, the number one up.com for an estimated early September ship date. Arcade One Up is the place for fun. They've got even more classics like Golden Tee, my favorite game, Mortal Kombat, and many others starting at just $3.99. Check this out. They're giving away an NBA Jam Shaq edition to a Locked On listener. Enter for a chance to win a game console for your man cave at arcade1up.com/locked on. That's arcade, the number one up.com/locked on. You've got till July 8th to enter to win NBA Jam Shaq Edition console. Don't miss out. Enter today. Who are you going to play with? All right. It has been an incredible saga here for Freddie Freeman. I can't even wrap my head around it, and I'm waiting for the rest of this to unfold. The drama of this whole thing really has gotten a hold of me. So we'll see where it goes from there. All right, coming up next, obviously we'll have some Shovels of Wisdom, and we'll wrap things up here on this Thursday. We appreciate you guys listening to Locked On Sports Atlanta, free on YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast, you search Locked On Sports Atlanta. Welcome back to A to Z here on Locked On Sports Atlanta, free on YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast, search Locked On Sports Atlanta. Give me a follow on Twitter at Mark Zinno. Of course, follow our entire network here at Locked On ATL. Before we wrap things up here with a sort of good news story connected to the Atlanta Braves, we will hand out a shovel of wisdom.
Brace yourselves, because it's time for the shovel of wisdom.
Time to get somebody whacked right upside the head, set them straight, and we'll do so right now. But you can do so as well on my Twitter at Mark Zinno, and use the hashtag shovel of wisdom. And today my shovel goes to Carlos Ramos. You don't know who Carlos Ramos is, and I didn't know who Carlos Ramos was either until I came across this story. But he is an umpire at Wimbledon. And yesterday, he ended a match with a penalty point in the fifth set tiebreak between Alejandro Dadovich Fokina and Yuri Vesely. Vesely was ahead in the fifth set tiebreak, and anybody who's familiar with the fifth set tiebreak in Wimbledon, it goes on and on and on until somebody wins by two. Go look up John Isner. You'll find out why fifth set tiebreaks at Wimbledon are a thing. Anyway, ADF, as they call him, Alejandro Dadovich Fokina, after hitting a ball into a net to make it 8-7 in the fifth tiebreak in the last game, as he was getting the ball back from the ball boy, ball girl, couldn't see who it was, they bounce it into him as they normally do. He was angered and frustrated, and then he swatted that ball up and out of the court in anger and frustration. He was immediately penalized a point, meaning Vesely gets a point for what they call ball abuse, and that ended the match 9-7. It's an awful way to lose a match. And look, I can't exactly, alleviate Fokina from blame here, because you have to keep your emotions under control. It's just a real bad, you have to give a warning. Now, apparently in the match, Fokina had received a code violation for an audible obscenity, which you're not allowed to curse either, apparently. And so, he had already been warned for, I guess, bad behavior. And Fokina had said after the match, he didn't think because it was a different ball abuse versus verbal abuse were different things, and he wasn't going to be penalized. Thought there were different violations. Anyway, a lot of people thought it was a bad way to have a match end, especially in the fifth set. Yeah, I think it is too. I guess it's the difference. If it was a third set tiebreak, to do it then is different. But on the final point of the match point, It's really, really bad. There's a picture of Vesely, who had left the court, and Dadovic Fokina is still sitting in the chair on the court by himself after the match had been over. It just, it's a bad way to have a match end, and I get why people are stunned for it. But I mean, come on, man. In general, these chair umpires love to make themselves a story. If you've watched Wimbledon long enough, they love to go over the top with this stuff. It gets really, really irritating sometimes, and they all sit there in their little accents and penalty point for Dadovic Fokina. Like, get out of here. Let them play. Like, I've had enough of umpires trying to make themselves the focal point of anything when it comes to sport. All right, let's pivot here to the Atlanta Braves real quickly. Piece of good news. According to Dave O'Brien of The Athletic, Ronald Acuna is progressing nicely, and he is expected to be in Philadelphia tonight. There's no word yet on if he's going to play, but it feels like it's a good sign that they're actually going to bring him. I mean, why would they send him to Philadelphia if they had no intention to play him, right? They could just send him to the next city, wherever he is, and when he's ready to play. So it feels like there's a good chance that Ronald Acuna will be back in the lineup tonight. Some more news on Tyler Matzek. He had 2 strikeouts and a perfect inning for AAA Gwinnett. The Braves certainly need him back now that they're short Kensley Jansen. Eddie Rosario also had a good day in his rehab stint as well. So, getting some help back could be huge for them. But they've certainly, it brings up an interesting scenario here when Acuna comes back, and then you have, Michael Harris already in the mix. And when Rosario comes back, what do you do with the rest of that outfield? And what does it look like? Because you got an abundance of guys that you want to get in the lineup. And if Rosario is hitting, clearly, he's a guy that you want to have in the lineup. But nonetheless, Brian Snitker's going to have to make some choices, I guess, when it boils down to it, and what it looks like. We'll see how it plays out. But it's actually, it's one of those things where it's a good problem to have. It's a real good problem to have. And if you play it correctly, well, then guess what? It is something that can benefit you. By the way, the Braves are now 21-5 in the month of June, which last time I checked, that's actually pretty good. So yeah, there is that. By the way, last night in the 9th inning, if you weren't keeping track during the game, Mark Appel, that name may bring a bell. He made his major league debut. He was picked number 1 overall in the Major League Baseball draft in 2013. 2013. And he was traded to Philadelphia in 2015. Injuries, ineffectiveness. He left baseball in 2018, only to come back to the Phillies organization and finally made his major league debut 9 years after he was drafted, which is awesome. Like, that's such a feel-good story. He pitched a scoreless 9th. Clearly, it didn't matter in the game because the Braves won at 4-1. But nonetheless, it's just one of those things where those kind of stories warm your heart. They make you feel good. And certainly that was a feel-good story for everybody involved, that Mark Appel's finally back in the bigs. All right, that'll do it for me today here on this Thursday. I'm heading out on vacation. John Michael's going to fill in Friday. We're off on Monday and then Tuesday and Wednesday. So I will see you guys 1 week from today, right back here on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Of course, you can always hit me up on Twitter at Mark Zinno. I'm always there to annoy, irritate, poke fun, troll, do all of the above, and certainly appreciate all the love and support. You guys have a wonderful 4th of July weekend. Be safe. Enjoy your family. Enjoy America. We need to do a little bit of that now as well. And we will be back again next Thursday. Take care. Don't forget to